The pizza box slipped in my hands the exact moment the front door flew open, and before I could apologize for ringing the wrong doorbell, a terrified young woman grabbed my wrist, yanked me across the threshold with astonishing strength, locked the deadbolt behind us, and whispered through trembling lips, "Please. Just for 5 minutes. Be my boyfriend." My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I had no idea who she was, what danger she believed was outside, or why a simple pizza delivery had suddenly become the most important moment of both our lives. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us the human heart is stronger than fear. Graham Mercer had never imagined that delivering pizzas during his college break would become anything more than a way to pay tuition. At 26, he was dependable, patient, and quietly optimistic despite the disappointments life had handed him. His father had passed away years earlier, leaving Graham to help care for his mother through difficult financial seasons. Every dollar mattered, and every delivery was simply another step toward the future he hoped to build. That afternoon had begun like every other. The summer sun bathed the quiet neighborhood in warm golden light. Children laughed while riding bicycles, sprinklers painted rainbows across green lawns, and neighbors waved from freshly trimmed gardens. Graham glanced at the address on the receipt, walked confidently to the front porch, rang the bell, and waited with the insulated delivery bag resting against his leg. He didn't notice until it was too late that he had stopped one house too soon. The woman standing before him looked no older than 30. Her pale face carried the exhaustion of someone who had spent months hiding tears behind forced smiles. Loose strands of auburn hair framed worried blue eyes that darted nervously toward the front window before settling on Graham. She wasn't frightened of him. She was frightened of someone else. She pressed both hands together as if praying. Her breathing slowly steadied while she looked toward the street. Graham finally noticed a luxury SUV parked several houses away. A sharply dressed man stood beside it, staring toward the house with impatient confidence. The woman silently pointed toward the window before gently placing one trembling hand around Graham's arm. Anyone watching would have assumed they were an affectionate couple. For several uncomfortable minutes, Graham simply stood beside her. Neither of them spoke louder than whispers. The stranger outside eventually glanced at his watch, shook his head with visible frustration, climbed back into the SUV, and drove away. The woman collapsed into the nearest chair as though every ounce of strength had abandoned her. Tears rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Graham instinctively handed her a stack of napkins from the pizza bag. Her name was Evelyn Harper. She explained everything between uneven breaths. Several months earlier she had ended a controlling relationship with a wealthy businessman named Preston Caldwell. At first Preston had seemed charming, generous, and protective. Slowly those qualities became manipulation, jealousy, and relentless control. He monitored her friendships, criticized every decision she made, and refused to accept that she deserved independence. When Evelyn finally found the courage to leave, Preston refused to believe the relationship was over. He never physically harmed her, but his constant appearances outside her workplace, grocery store, and home had become emotionally exhausting. Each visit carried the same pressure. He insisted they belonged together. He ignored every request to stay away. The police had warned him repeatedly, but because he carefully stayed within legal boundaries, there was little they could immediately do. That afternoon Preston had texted that he wanted one final conversation. Evelyn refused to answer. When she saw his SUV approaching, panic overwhelmed her. Then the unexpected doorbell rang. Seeing Graham standing there with a pizza had felt like the answer to a desperate prayer. Without thinking, she pulled him inside. Graham listened without judgment. He knew fear when he saw it. He also recognized loneliness because he carried plenty of his own. Only then did they realize neither of them had actually ordered a pizza. Both looked at the delivery receipt and burst into laughter for the first time all afternoon. The correct address was next door. The laughter didn't erase Evelyn's anxiety, but it reminded her she was still capable of smiling. Graham finally delivered the pizza to the proper customer, apologized for the delay, and expected never to see Evelyn again, yet life has a strange way of returning us to the people we accidentally meet. Several days later Graham stopped by a neighborhood cafe before beginning another shift. Standing in line ahead of him was Evelyn. She recognized him immediately, and this time her smile appeared genuine instead of frightened. She insisted on buying his lunch as thanks for helping a complete stranger during the most terrifying afternoon of her life. Conversation flowed effortlessly. Graham discovered Evelyn worked as an elementary school art teacher. She loved painting landscapes, volunteering at animal shelters, and restoring old furniture she rescued from garage sales. Beneath the anxiety Preston had created lived a remarkably compassionate woman who had simply forgotten what peace felt like. Over the following weeks they occasionally crossed paths around town. Sometimes they intentionally met for coffee during lunch breaks. Other times they walked through public parks beneath clear afternoon skies discussing dreams they had quietly abandoned. Graham admitted he wanted to become a licensed architect but worried he couldn't afford another year of school. Evelyn confessed she had stopped painting because Preston constantly mocked her artwork, convincing her it was childish and worthless. Instead of trying to rescue one another, they simply listened. Sometimes genuine healing begins with someone who chooses to hear your story without trying to rewrite it. As summer gradually gave way to early autumn, Graham noticed remarkable changes. Evelyn smiled more often. She laughed without glancing over her shoulder. She returned to her art studio and filled blank canvases with breathtaking scenes of lakes, forests, and quiet country roads glowing beneath afternoon sunlight. Meanwhile Graham submitted applications for architecture scholarships he had delayed for nearly 2 years. They encouraged each other simply by believing possibilities still existed, but emotional scars rarely disappear without one final test point. One crisp afternoon, Graham and Evelyn attended a local outdoor charity festival. Families filled the park. Musicians played cheerful songs while artists displayed handcrafted work beneath colorful tents. Evelyn proudly exhibited several of her newest paintings for the first time. Then Preston appeared. He walked confidently toward her display with the same polished smile that had once hidden years of manipulation. Instead of shrinking away, Evelyn stood perfectly still. Preston congratulated her artwork with practiced charm before quietly suggesting they should talk privately. Graham watched uncertainty flicker across Evelyn's face. For a brief moment the frightened woman from the wrong door afternoon returned. Then something extraordinary happened. Evelyn gently shook her head. She calmly explained that her life no longer belonged to someone who ignored her boundaries. She thanked him for the lessons the painful relationship had taught her but firmly stated there would be no second chance between them. She deserved friendships built on respect, relationships built on trust, and a future free from fear. People nearby noticed nothing dramatic because there was no shouting, no insults, and no revenge, only quiet courage. Preston realized the control he once held had completely disappeared. Without another word he turned around and walked away. Graham didn't celebrate his departure. He celebrated Evelyn's freedom. Several months later Graham received wonderful news that he had earned a scholarship covering nearly all remaining tuition for architecture school. He rushed to share the letter with Evelyn, who surprised him with news of her own. One of the visitors from the charity festival had recommended her artwork to a regional gallery. Her first public exhibition would open before the end of the year. Neither success belonged entirely to luck, both had grown because someone believed in them when they struggled to believe in themselves. As winter approached, Graham often thought back to the ridiculous mistake that had changed everything. One wrong doorbell. One frightened stranger. One impossible request whispered in desperation. Neither of them could have predicted where that single unexpected afternoon would lead. On the anniversary of their unforgettable first meeting, Graham carried a pizza box to Evelyn's front porch beneath another bright afternoon sky. This time he checked the address 3 separate times before ringing the bell. She opened the door laughing before he could even explain. Instead of fear filling the doorway, warmth welcomed him home. Inside the pizza box rested no pizza at all. Nestled carefully in the center was a small velvet ring box. Graham told Evelyn that the greatest opportunities sometimes arrive disguised as mistakes. He confessed that every meaningful change in his life had begun the moment she trusted a complete stranger enough to ask for help. He didn't promise a perfect future because life could never guarantee perfection. Instead, he promised honesty during difficult days, patience during uncertain seasons, laughter whenever possible, and unwavering respect every single day, with tears shining in her eyes. Evelyn accepted. Years later they often laughed while telling friends the unbelievable story of how they met. People always assumed it sounded too unbelievable to be true. Yet the details that mattered most were never about the mistaken delivery or the dramatic beginning. The true miracle was what happened afterward. A frightened woman discovered her voice. A hard-working young man rediscovered his dreams. Two lonely hearts discovered that kindness offered without expecting anything in return can quietly change the direction of an entire lifetime. Before we finish, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when one unexpected act of kindness completely changed your life or restored your faith in people? Please leave a meaningful comment below and share the lesson this story reminded you of. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our family, where every story reminds us that even the biggest blessings sometimes begin with the smallest mistakes, and where hope often waits behind the very door we never meant to knock on. If you'd like, I can also make it even more cinematic, slower paced, and closer to 5,003,000 words for higher YouTube watch time.